And I'm beginning recording. Welcome to the September 17th, 2020 meeting of the Common Working Group. We are here today. I'll be coordinating the meeting in the absence of our fearless leader, Dawn Foster. And let's take a look at the things on the agenda. First off, action items from the previous meeting. Scrolling down. Language distribution. I did incorporate some of the feedback. I don't know if it's all of it. Georg was going to add implementation and visualizations from Grimoire Lab. Let's take a look at how that's looking. All right, I think we have to maybe put this on the agenda of some other working groups. All right, I don't have Grimoire Lab stuff yet, so a little bit of progress on that one from the previous meeting. And let's see what other, I think those are the two action items. So some action, not complete. And let's see, review PRs. And let's see. Just gonna put this in a different window.
You want to start recording, Sean?
I did.
Oh, well, hello, recording.
Yeah. Yeah, when I said welcome to the meeting, that was right after I hit the record button. So this is the next item, looking at issues and pull requests. We have no pull requests. Let's see what the issues are. And I don't think, let's see, release notes. I don't think we have to talk about that. We have burstiness, which I know we discussed a little bit last time, and discussion on responsiveness metrics back from May. So burstiness, I think the discussion that we had the last time was somewhat geared around, see if we captured any of that. Maybe we didn't discuss it. But we have burstiness. I know one of the comments that I had was that these are effectively kind of, they could be release cycles. So tying metrics, differences over time to releases in a repository, which we can do in Augur. And the other point of discussion I remember from that is this would essentially be a particular way of, essentially burstiness is a particular way of looking at other metrics. Cycles of activity in existing metrics. Anybody else have comments or thoughts about the burstiness issue? It looks like the one issue that could warrant discussion today.
I think what you have there, I mean, for your second point, it's like burstiness around issues, it's burstiness around PRs, mail list activity, things like that.
Where would something like a hackathon or some kind of concerted effort to increase participation or increase contributions, how does that fit in here somewhere? Or
it does, because we do see burstiness around hackathons.
I think it would be, Elizabeth, like you would use this metric as a way to see the impact of a hackathon, something like that. Or you would use this metric when you have no idea what happened, and you might want to be like, why in the world did we just get 45 issues posted?
Yeah. For example, when we have when we've done hackathons, or when I've talked with people like Dawn about, wow, you've got a ton of activity in this one repo at this one point in time that stands out from the other 4 years of its life. She's like, oh, we had a hackathon around that. So I think sometimes burstiness is tied to releases, and sometimes it's tied to these intensive coding periods that occur.
I observed this. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, just on that same theme, I think you could just genericize and put events in there as well, like somebody presenting it at a conference. I mean, at first when Elizabeth said that, I was like, oh, that kind of falls under events itself, but I kind of actually like the distinction between the two, because hackathon is like putting fingers on keyboards and doing something. Events is like, I heard about it and now I'm checking this out. I don't know if you'd agree with there, Elizabeth, or not.
Yeah, no, I totally do. Because a hackathon, the whole, excuse me, the whole purpose is to get people to contribute and to do stuff, like you said. But a conference, you're just, presenting. So that would be kind of like an auxiliary benefit to presenting. Whereas a hackathon, you really want to be more deliberate in measuring the impact, like Matt said earlier. So yeah, I think they could be separate.
I observed the same activity when Google Summer of Codes joined the CHAOSS project. I started seeing them putting a lot of issues or requests and evolving around the activity.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well, because we've seen for sure, I mean, just recently with the Google Summer of Docs, like there's been a huge push from Jaskrat to, he's making a lot of contributions right now in this short period of time. So I don't know, I guess my question is around that. What is considered a burst? Like, is there a time frame, like it has to be 2 days or 48 hours? I guess that would be 2 days already, sorry. Or like, is it a month? Like,
Yeah.
what's the time frame for a burst?
So I think of Sean in Augur had been working on a tool called Augie, I think.
Yeah,
and
actually
the anomaly detector.
Mm-hmm.
And so what it did was it would take, I don't know quite how it works, Sean, you can describe it, but I'm guessing it was a couple standard deviations away from the norm.
Yeah.
And when it saw that, it would send an alert.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's configurable, and then people can limit the number of events that they get in a particular day. So if you're monitoring 3,000 repositories, you may have 100 anomalies a day or 50, and you may just want to see the 8 most anomalous, or you may want to target specific rebos. And we actually covered Augie in the Augur working group meeting, and that's on video. So you can learn all about Augie in that video. And I will, once Kevin posts the video, I'll promote it.
I would say that from the visual perspective, I'm not looking at the standard deviation or anything. There's a sudden spike in the graph. We can observe that as a burstiness. Like if your graph is going very smooth, a straight line, or like smoothly rising, but there is a sudden spike in the graph, that clearly shows the burstiness. It doesn't correlate with the time, or it's just an event that made that a spike in the graph.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the spike is likely to turn up as an anomaly, but yes. But I think, mentorship programs.
About critical bugs. Would burstiness occur around critical bugs?
That is likely.
You would hope so anyway, that people actually want to fix them and like pay attention to that. So yeah, you would.
If not, we're in trouble, right?
Yeah, or sometimes,
exactly.
Yeah, sometimes like critical, like what you saw, for example, with OpenSSL is you saw bursty activity, by completely different people than those who had been contributing previously, that effectively rewrote all of what OpenSSL is over a period of months. And that shows up in the OpenSSL repo as, I'm not even sure it shows up as, it initially shows up as burstiness, but then it shows up as a steady amount of activity over a period of about 2 years after that bug was released, just to make sure that the technology remained up to date. So it would have
So
initially appeared as bursty, but then it would have looked like the trend had just changed.
Could we do something, Sean? Could you click on that Google Doc right under burstiness issues?
I thought I did, but apparently
I thought you did too.
not.
Okay, so here, could we start taking some of what you just typed up and dropping it into like areas? I just grabbed the stuff you had just typed, Sean, and just dropped it into the description.
Yeah, I didn't think anything covered.
I don't know if this is something worth noting here or where, but I think there might be also a, I don't know what the right word is, but there might be some kind of tie between if your project is something that other people depend on and they need features or they need something fixed or they need something, then they start contributing for their own purposes. And that's kind of like the critical bugs, but it's a little bit different. And I don't know if that's something we want to take note of or not. I don't know. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah,
and so I'm thinking.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just thinking in the objectives, like maybe what is the objective of this metric? It's, to help, I don't know if you see typing, if you're in that document, to help identify impacts of hackathons, right? Which was mentioned earlier, and to help identify what you had just talked about, Elizabeth, which was like identify when new community members show up. I don't know how to say this real well.
Right, because you might not even, you might not even know that a project is using your project until that burstiness happens and causes you to kind of look a little deeper. And then you see a bunch of people kind of cross contributing from this other place, then that might be an indication that this is a dependency that, they are really using our stuff or my project. So I don't know.
Okay. I wrote that down. It's super wordy in how I typed it, but.
All right. Oops.
So I think this is a good start. I can take the action item of trying to take some of these notes
Oops.
and bring them back in 2 weeks. You know what I mean?
Okay. All right.
I have a quick question. Is it common to see that after a period of burstiness, the levels does stay higher? The level of engagement and contribution stays higher after that?
I think there are multiple patterns that rear their heads. Sometimes it can, sometimes it doesn't.
Like if someone, I was just thinking if someone was like their ultimate goal was to increase the overall level of contributions, would the burstiness, like doing something that would increase burstiness, i.e. a hackathon, would that help them achieve the ultimate goal of raising the whole level of engagement? I didn't know if we had any data about that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Kind of like if our line is 1 and then there's a burst, does our line then come back down to 1.5? And we stay a little above where we used to be. It's not obviously staying at that peak burstiness spot, but it's an interesting question. I don't know. I put it in contribution. Do you see that? It may not go there, but
nope, that's perfect. Just want to make sure we got it into the spreadsheet. Well done.
I am 4 steps ahead of you.
That was 1 step, but okay.
You don't even know it. Yeah, that was the only one you saw, but I'm currently, so I know what you're doing 4 steps from now, and I've already done it.
All right. Risk technical forks is the next agenda item. Unless there's a, I guess actually the next one would be to review progress on the spreadsheet. But is there more that we want to say about burstiness, or we just want to give Matt the action item for next week on that one?
I already gave myself the action item for it. See?
I don't see, but
scroll down and you'll see it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, just like I put them in the top level, so it's easier to spot, but that works too. So review metric spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And let's see, contributor employer location. Let's see, for some reason, I think I have to reduce the size. I think I had my thing pretty good. So looks like we do have a lot of stuff here under contributor employer location and contributor location. And what we said is learn from contrib location and do more work. So I think contributor location is what we want to learn from. Is this a release metric?
Yes.
Okay. And obviously there's a sense that was contributor employer location released as well?
I don't think so.
Somebody just turned that to green.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think it was.
Yeah, all right, because it was blue a second ago and then it became green.
I think we had talked extensively about this one and then decided to release one, see what feedback we get. At least that's what the note there indicates to me. Before we release another location metric.
I recall the discussion. It was like whether it can be a filter or itself a new metric. Filter in the existing like location, contributor location, or make it a new metric. That's the discussion was last time.
Yeah. So when I think of employer location, I think, okay, I'm a developer. I work for, let's say I work for the Japanese intelligence agency, whatever that is. But I do that in my home in Columbia, Missouri, which is probably treason, but let's move past that. And my employer is in Japan, but I'm here. So I think employer location is intended, if I remember from prior discussions, to reflect where the employers are at as opposed to where the people are at. So those are often two different things. Does anyone else recall this discussion from a prior
I
meeting?
do, and then I recall this discussion going down the road of like there's not a single location that
Right.
is, and some places
Yes.
are incorporated in Delaware, so Delaware would get like this awesome look from an open source perspective.
Right, right.
So I think the general like feeling was this is not a real tractable metric based on that issue alone when we have headquarters all over the place.
Yeah, you'd certainly have to be this would require a lot of hands-on decoding. Like for literally every employer, you'd have to have someone do analysis to determine where that employer's primary location or locations are.
Is there anyone asking for this metric?
I mean, somebody did.
I think we were talking about location, and then we determined that this is one type of location and it should be a separate metric because it's so complex. I think it came out of the work on the contributor location. It did not come because anyone said, I would like to know this information. So to me, this is a metric we can say we've talked about it.
Right.
Yeah,
But it just
Let's work on other things.
I think that this drops back to considering, and I think there's an issue that I had open. That was the release candidate for comments. Does employer come up in here? No. I don't know why that was linked somewhere, or maybe somebody put it in chat. I think it's more the case that unlike contributor location.
Whoops, I think two people were typing in that box.
Oh,
Meaning
really?
me and you.
All right. I will let you. Will it screw your system up if I turn word wrap on for the remarks comment?
I don't know.
Oh.
That row is really ugly now.
It's just wider, Matt. It's not ugly.
It's inconsistent. Drives me crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
it's okay.
It's hard. Like,
I think function over form is okay in this case, Matt.
I think that I wanted to clear up because previously it had said that this is just derived for sort of a variance on contributor location, and I actually don't think it is at all based on this discussion. Like, this is where is the employer located, and that question alone will require substantial debate.
Oh yeah, good idea to put a note in at the top here. That
Putting a comment in.
Yeah, or comment.
You could just take the same comment from the spreadsheet.
So I want to put more detail in it. So contributor location is where the contributor is. Employer location can be confounded by multiple locations to tax purposed location of a headquarters in one state or country, even though most work occurs elsewhere. So for example, like I'm trying to think of a company that has a headquarters in Delaware, but all your development is in California. Boeing's headquarters is in Chicago for tax purposes, but most of its work occurs in Washington State and in Missouri. You have Elsevier, which is a major publisher. Most of the work occurs really in many different states and countries, and most of the money from that British incorporated company flows to a separate holding company in the Netherlands for tax purposes. So identifying employer location is definitely a stickier wicket because it's got nothing to do with IP address.
And with IP, I know there are laws in the making to make it even worse managing it, because Europe especially is trying to work against the American companies and trying to keep some of the revenue in Europe, the tax revenue that is. So there are more and more laws coming out that will make managing IP even within the same company.
Well, I meant internet. I meant IP address, but not intellectual property. But I hear you.
Yep.
I think you were talking about intellectual property.
Yep. Which factors into the location, because if you have a company that says any work that you do with our hardware on the clock belongs to us, then contributor location or the employer location is important for the IP tracing.
What laws are abided by? Yeah.
And for tax purposes, I don't think we have a law quite yet that goes that far, but it's definitely in the conversation.
Yeah. That conversation's got to be about, can my American patent be enforced in a different country? Or can my British patent be enforced in other countries? And I'm not a patent lawyer, but most people definitely want their patents in the US because there's more money here, or there was.
Or can you have internal measures for costs derived in different countries, because that's where the engineers sit, even though it's all the same company.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it's off topic. Sorry.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. Let's see, anything else on the metric spreadsheet here? Working on language distribution, technical forks, and burstiness. These are in progress. Is burstiness of activity any different than burstiness?
I think that's the same.
I do too. I'm gonna copy these rows up here because I think Matt just created that row, right?
Which row? Burstiness row?
Yeah, the under time burstiness of activity.
No. Maybe from a long time ago. I didn't do it today.
It was literally all the same data. So.
And I think burstiness of activity fits better with the time than with the country, with the what.
Okay. So we're just gonna delete this row.
Well, wait, hold on. Before you do that,
all right.
Grab the.
It's all there. All the rest of the stuff's the same. Although you didn't. The Google spreadsheet isn't in either place.
The Google Doc, you mean?
Yes. That's why.
Okay.
You knew what I meant.
I did.
Hang on. Oh, here it is, bursty. Get all bursty with it. I will replace.
I did it.
Okay, perfect.
And then you can get rid of row 25.
All right. do we close issue 32 then, or do we leave that open? And again, I think it's good to, if we have an issue open, I think it's good to keep track of that as well.
I just added a link in the issue to the Google Doc.
Sweet. Okay. And then for common, go back to the agenda here. Technical forks. Anything that you want to add about technical forks today, Vinod?
Yes, I have worked a little bit on that. So if you can take a look at that. Okay. I have a one question because I was not in the last meeting where this concept of technical fork, word technical arise to the forks. My suggestion was just to keep the fork as a overall arching, and in the description we are having this distinction between technical, community, or hostile fork.
So the
Like,
reason, since you weren't here, let me give you the reason that we landed on technical fork. There's also this concept of a hostile fork. The examples that are often given are when OpenOffice forked from LibreOffice with no intention of ever returning its code back to LibreOffice, and that was kind of a hostile fork. Same thing happened when Oracle Corporation bought MySQL. There was immediately an open source hostile fork to MariaDB of that code base. And so there is, in the lingo and experience of open source, there are these periodic occurrences of forks that are not forks in the sense that we're talking about them. They are forks with a, I don't want to say political agenda, maybe that's too strong, but they're forks with it's sort of like when Paul Simon became just Paul Simon instead of part of Simon and Garfunkel. There was a rift. Essentially, these hostile forks are the symbol of a rift where the band breaks up.
So I've made several comments in this document talking about the kind of the conceptual idea of forks that you're referring to.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's helpful for us to really talk about hostile forks or the different conceptual types of forks. I think we just need to look at it specifically as a technical fork, which is a distributed version control copy of a repository project, and we're measuring it specifically on this platform. And I put a couple bits of text in there that basically says we can't measure intentions. So the number of technical forks may provide insight into forking intentions. However, we can't really say anything about hostile forks. We don't know if it's a hostile fork. All we know is that it's a technical fork.
Well, in practice, though, a hostile fork doesn't show up as a fork on a repo. So they fork it, they remove the link to the other fork, and they make it their own repo.
Which I think further strengthens the case that we can't really differentiate between a hostile fork and a technical fork. Because as you say, it's pulled onto a different platform, right?
Perhaps hostile, there's a more neutral word that we could come up with. I do think that people interpret forks two different ways, and some kind of reference to the other way to make it clear that that's not this will disambiguate what we mean by technical fork.
I think we can do that with just a disclaimer that basically kind of similar to what I've written there, that basically says technical forks may provide insight into these other conceptual ideas of forking. However,
tell me, under what section is that?
It's down in objectives.
Okay.
So, and then I also have a couple comments that.
I have proposed an implementation through which we can post hoc measure the difference between hostile or not hostile, is like ratio of contributing forks and ratio of not contributing forks. So like I've taken a fork, but if I'm contributing back, that becomes a ratio of contributing fork. And if I'm not contributing, but I'm still having a fork copy, so that is a ratio of not contributing fork. So that can help us distinguish a little bit.
I
So
like
that
the
could,
idea. What do you do with forks? I fork repositories just because I want my own copy to play with, but I never intend to contribute back or run with it as a separate project.
Yeah,
I've
so
also-
that ratio will help to like gauge this aspect.
I've also created what I call stability forks. If I'm using another repo for something, I will create a fork solely so that when I build my software that uses the code in that repository, I can rely on it being consistent over time. And then I can choose periodically to update my fork with the latest from the source fork. So that's a third purpose that people use forks for.
And then I would reiterate.
I saw that a lot in Comcast's collection of repos. They do a lot of stability forking there.
I would reiterate that it's really, really hard to measure intentions. So I don't think we should even try.
I would also
Right.
say that some projects are meant to be forked, like they're serve as templates for someone to take and run with in their own local, if it's a local kind of project, especially in like the social good space. There's a lot of those who are like, okay, we have the baseline, now take it and go run this in your city or run this in your town or whatever. So I think that's
So
just
Kevin,
another use case of not intending to fork back or to contribute back.
like I'm cool if we like remove this and then put Kevin's thing from the objective under description. I have an instinct that we want to hit this distinction in the like higher than objectives.
I
So
agree that
maybe
it has to be addressed. I just don't think we want to dig into what a hostile fork is.
I agree. The sole purpose of the sentence is to disambiguate, and so with that purpose, I like your paragraph better than the one that exists for disambiguation.
And I think too, maybe that, like Vinod said, maybe it's a metric that we would combine with another metric to show hostile forks or to pull those out or show the
Right.
just show the ones that didn't come back, you know, to you. So I don't know if that's considered a filter or what we call it when we add it with another metric, but I think that could be the way to go forward with that.
I have added that to the parameters, maybe like just to have a ratio of contributing and non-contributing.
I think that's a good parameter.
Instead of saying
filter.
hostile, yeah. Instead of saying hostile, I would say non-contributing fork.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot better than non-contributing fork.
Because yeah, another kind of non-contributing fork is just I forked it for my own entertainment. I just wanted to have it handy. Like sometimes I fork it because it's easier than bookmarking the original one and remembering to go back to it. It'll remind me that I'm doing something there if it's in my list of repositories. And so forking is sometimes something I do for convenience, for my own convenience.
Would we then create a non-contributing fork metric where we could discuss what that might look like there?
I think a non-contributing fork is, I think it's a parameter on this one. And I would say if a fork is never issued a pull request back to the repository it is forked from, it is by definition a non-contributing fork. There's also a technical fork, but it is a non-contributing technical fork.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
Is it a parameter or a filter?
It depends. It depends on, functionally they would behave the same. Like like my statistics, whether I call it as a parameter, I guess that depends. That's kind of an implementation guide. Like, do I need to have fork type contributing, non-contributing in the parameters? And filters is, do I want to filter by, do people get the right to take out and present separately the filtering and non-filtering forks?
If they're almost equivalent, I would prefer filters because that's a defined section in our template.
And we actually already, Kevin probably already wrote it in there. Parameters is also a defined section, is it not?
No, I think parameters is optional.
Implementation.
Parameters
Filters.
is something that the evolution working group was using heavily, but none of the others. And it's more technical.
I don't think we need a. I don't think we
I
need.
wouldn't get rid of it.
I don't think we need it in this case, because there's really, I'm going to count the forks, and the ratio of contributing fork to total forks and the ratio of non-contributing forks to total forks. We have to define contributing fork. Is there a place for definitions in the template?
Not a defined section. I would put it under
Just put it
either
right
in
here.
the description or in the references.
Is a contributing fork synonymous with a review?
I think a review is something on a pull request.
Yeah, yeah. In
So
order
I'm going to say
to contribute a fork, you have to a PR back in. So a contributing fork would be a successfully merged review.
it doesn't even have to be successfully merged. I think it's, have they ever issued a pull request back to the source fork?
Yes.
So it's just a review.
It's
just a pull request.
And it's not a pull request, it's not a review, it's a change request.
Is that what we're calling it now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
Like
I must have missed that conversation.
We have to like, we basically, everyone decide, there was fairly good consensus at the second to most recent general meeting, and at the general meeting, the first general meeting of the year, we had a fairly full agenda and we did not get to that agenda item. So, I mean, I think it's, from the evolution group's perspective, calling it a review is absolutely confusing and it needs to change. And we've done a lot of work to identify change request as what it's going to be. In the interest of the community, we've been waiting for that to be addressed in the monthly meeting, and we just missed. There was so much other stuff in the monthly meeting this last time that we didn't get there, but we should probably make it the first agenda item in the next monthly meeting so that it can be resolved for once and for all. But I believe it is going to be called a change request. Certainly review does not cut it. It's too ambiguous, it's too overloaded as a term in software.
I definitely prefer change request. So
Yeah.
Sean, I can add that to the agenda.
Please.
Just put a comment in that to make sure we don't miss it.
Please, yeah, I would ask that it be just put at the top of the agenda so that it can be put to bed.
alternately, you could just treat it as part of the code release process and make the changes and put it up for comment.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I'd wanted consensus before I did it because it's kind of a big, it's changing the name of an existing metric, and I didn't want the evolution working group doing that in any way that could be perceived as not in the openness of the community.
It is a metric that affects a lot of other metrics and
Right.
works as well. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah, so that's the reason that I wanted, and we didn't get the okey doke in the August monthly meeting. So we almost had the okey doke. There was one person who expressed some concerns, and so I wanted to have the discussion one more time. I mean, the overwhelming consensus, except for one person, was we should go with change request. But I didn't want to steamroll that one person. I wanted there to be another discussion. It's solely in the interest of maintaining the openness of the community. And since one working group, and I was coordinating that working group at the time, suggested it, I didn't want to create any impression that we were steamrolling.
Let's just bring it up again. And I don't know what other people's thoughts are. I'm not sure that if we can agree kind of through fuzzy consensus that this is the change, that all of the metrics and all of the metrics that refer to review need to go under public review, like under a 1 month comment period. This almost seems like a grammatical change to me. And we had agreed that grammar changes don't need to be around open for 30 days.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think as an evolution metric, I think evolution's wish should take the front.
Yeah. I would say there was a prominent, important, there was a prominent founding member of the community and a board member who was expressing some reservations about it. And so I was sensitive, and I think I was running the meeting, and Matt, I think for some reason you weren't able to be there. So I was particularly reluctant to I just didn't want to steamroll it. I just didn't want to create the impression. I probably overthought it.
I think that might have been the last issue that was being discussed in the meeting too. So we may have actually run out of time or had to stop.
Yeah, that's I'd have to go back and check the tape, but that's possible. Anyhow, that was a sidelight conversation. I think we're reaching reasonable consensus I think technical forks is becoming fairly developed at this juncture.
We don't have
ready for release.
We don't have any open suggestions.
No,
I just accepted all.
Yeah, I saw that, Georg. I think if there are no opposing views, that we may want to ask Vinod to prepare this for release review as an interim release metric.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
A quick question about the APIs. I noticed we linked to the GitHub API. I'm assuming GitLab provides similar information through their API.
Did we link to the GitHub API?
Down below or under.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
I provided these references when I was developing this metric because I got the idea like how they have used it. So I'm not sure. I can look at for the GitLab.
Yeah, I would say if there's a GitLab one, if we're going to start including those, and I do not think that is a bad idea.
Yes.
GitLab would certainly be the other substantial platform. I
will look for GitLab and Bitbucket both. So if there is any, then I'll put the link and then.
Since this is like many of our metrics cannot be retrieved through a single API call, but the number of forks can. So I'd say it's a good idea to include it.
Okay.
So I think we're at the end, but before you go, Sean, I had one quick question for you. We can stop on this one because it's not a common question.
Okay. All right, so let me stop the recording. Thank you, everybody, for a wonderful common meeting.